Hey guys, Spud Knocker here, as always. And today we have a bit of a different kind of video. We're not going to be doing any flying today, but rather we're going to be talking about a new item that I would definitely add to my wish list for DCS World. This is a new feature that I came up with for the payload screen of the DCS World mission editor that I think could add a lot of functionality to that screen for both mission editors and everyday DCS World pilots who want to create better and more effective loadouts for their aircraft. Now, for those from Eagle Dynamics who I'm speaking to in this video, this is not a criticism of anything that is in the mission editor as of June 2021, but rather talking about a bit of a new feature that I came up with that, like I said, could add a lot of functionality for DCS World players. Now, as you guys know, the mission editor, and specifically the payload screen, has gone over a pretty big revamp in the latest few updates over the last few months since the inclusion of DCS World 2.7 in the open beta. So when you go to the loadout screen now, of course you have this beautiful new, much larger window for the 3D model of your aircraft that also includes weapons when you click on them and add them to your aircraft, or create a new loadout and you add them to each pylon. Now, while that's really cool and really awesome, it doesn't necessarily add all that much functionality over than the fact that it looks cool. However, one small change that really made a huge difference for me, especially when it comes to creating loadouts for Eastern Bloc aircraft, where I am not nearly as familiar with the weapons themselves that actually go on those aircraft's pylons, it is this portion. When you hover over a weapon type, it gives you an expanded view on what kind of weapon it is. So we see here we have S-80 FP2 80mm unguided rockets, high explosive, fragmentation, and anti-personnel. So that to me right there is a major boon that allows me to add, say, the correct type of weapon for the correct kind of job that is needed to be performed by, say, this Mi-24 Hind. So we can see we've got unguided rockets, high explosive anti-tank, anti-personnel, the HE frag AP, blast and fragmentation, illumination, smoke, etc, etc, etc. That, like I said, makes this just so much easier to add weapons to these unfamiliar Eastern Bloc aircraft, at least for me. I know that those of you in DCS World who really only fly red aircraft really know all these things very well. But like I said, coming from more of a Western-centric view, Eastern aircraft weapons are very still unfamiliar to me. So while this is absolutely fantastic, one thing that I think could be a major addition that would make creating loadouts, especially for aircraft like, say, the FA-18C Hornet, would be the addition of a kind of simplified weight and balance system for the aircraft. So let's say we make a new loadout here, we'll just call it new loadout 99. And so we all know that FA-18 Hornets in the wild, whether they're flying combat and training, tend to carry some pretty exotic asymmetrical loadouts. Right here in DCS World, there's no real way to see how balanced out your FA-18 is. Even some F-16s that fly out there in real life fly with some pretty heavily asymmetrical loadouts, which is to be expected from a fly-by-wire jet like the Falcon or the Hornet. However, like I said, there's no real easy way to actually find out how much your aircraft weighs and how much those stores weigh, the racks that those weapons go on to weigh, in order to kind of balance out the aircraft. Now, I don't think that we need to go so far in depth in the DCS World payload screen that we have things like arms and moments and rotational torque and, all these kinds of weight and balance calculations that come into play with real aircraft, but rather just a simplified way of seeing the weights of those weapons in either metric or imperial. Especially imperial for me, because I am an American that is hobbled by the imperial system since birth. So let's say we wanted to figure out kind of the weights of the aircraft that we're seeing here in front of us. Basically, what I have done in the past is take a look at our load screen here, and we can see how heavy or how light the jet is getting from the fuel weight, as well as when we put weapons on the aircraft. So let's say we add an AIM-9M for the weapons weight. We can see that added a total of about 150 pounds for an AIM-9M Sidewinder. And we can see that total over here also went up by about 150 pounds. Now that's kind of hard to actually see for those of you guys who are using the mission editor. You kind of have to do a little bit of math, and it's not quite as streamlined as it could be. So I think that it could be really easy for Eagle Dynamics to take these little additional suffixes that they've added to the names of the weapons. Like we can see now it's AIM-9 Sidewinder IR AAM for air-to-air missile. I think it could be very easy for Eagle Dynamics to add, say, 150 pounds after the AAM part of the name of the missile. Similarly, I think they should do the same thing with, say, weapons racks. So let's say I want to load on this outer pylons, let's say we want to load a GBU 38. Let's see if we can find it here, GBU 38. And on the other outboard pylon, we want to add a GBU 12. 1 times GBU 12. Now these two weapons, while they're both in the 500-pound class, they do not weigh exactly the same. The two guidance kits are very, very different on a standard Mark 82 weapon that goes onto these. However, they definitely differ in weight by quite a bit. The GBU 38, at least in DCS World, is actually slated by the encyclopedia to be a little bit heavier than the GBU 12. Now, right now, to kind of get a really good, perfect weight for these weapons, you have to go into MISC, go to the encyclopedia, go to the weapons section, and then scroll down through this giant list to find the GBUs. Here is our GBU 38. And we can see in Imperial, the weight is 252 kilograms. Then we can go to our GBU 12, and we can see that it's 225 kilograms, showing us that that GBU 38, at least in DCS World, is in fact heavier than the GBU 12, which would then throw off the weight and balance, at least in the rotational axis of our FA-18 slightly, so that way the aircraft would want to roll to its right-hand side. Now, I think it could be quite easy to actually show the total weight of, say, the weapons that are on a certain station, like say in a little bit of a box up here at the top where it shows mission payload. You could actually like put a little like another little like Excel box up here that says this station has X weight on it, whereas this station has Y weight on it. And then you could compare and contrast the two. Like say if we wanted to change it from just a single GBU 12, or sorry, GBU 38, what if we want to do a Brew 54, let's see, Brew 55 with 2 times GBU 38s. Now how much would that additional weight cost in terms of the actual Brew 55 plus the additional GBU 38? And then what about the weight difference between that weapon and let's say a 2 times GBU 12 on a Brew 33 that is a non-smart rack? While they look very similar, I bet you anything that they actually don't weigh the exact same. And so we'd want to figure out the rotational force that would be on our FA-18C and see which way we're going to have to trim it out. Likewise, if we wanted to go for a very asymmetrical loadout, let's say we wanted to put a fuel tank on our inboard station, and then say a bomb, let's say it's a GBU 16 on the other inboard station. Now, conventional wisdom tells us that a fuel tank should be offset by a 1,000-pound class weapon, but it would, like I said earlier, it would be really, really cool if we could see exactly how much the store on these pylons actually weighs here in the DCS World payload screen. So that way we could see exactly how balanced out our F-18 is and exactly which way we're gonna have to trim the jet in order to keep it flying straight and level. This is especially important for those cat strokes as well as when you're just trying to take off from a land base with an asymmetrical loadout. Same thing could apply to, say, a targeting pod on the cheek station. Let's say we put an AT-FLIR over here and an AIM-120 on the other side. Again, conventional wisdom tells us that these are really not that different in terms of their weight, but they definitely are different, and it would be great to see which way the balance is going to be going. Now, if Eagle Dynamics did want to make it a little bit more complex, you could even show the player maybe a bit of a graph or something of that nature to show which side of the aircraft is going to be heavier or which side is going to be lighter, so which side of the aircraft is going to want to roll. The heavier the weapon is and the further out it goes on the wing of the aircraft, the higher the moment will be and the more rotational torque it's going to put on the aircraft itself. This is incredibly important when it comes to aircraft, say a AV-8B Harrier. And when you have an asymmetrical loadout on the AV-8B Harrier, you'll notice that the Marine Corps tends to put their fuel tanks on the outer stations because those are very, very predictable in their weight. And so that way you have the higher rotational torque further to the outside of the wings, whereas you have stores that you're going to be dropping and creating very much imbalanced loadouts on the aircraft itself as you're expending those weapons or as you're flying through the mission. You're going to have less rotational torque on the airframe if they're dropped from the inner pylons here. Some way to potentially represent that in a much simplified version for the everyday DCS World player would be super, super fantastic, and I think could add a lot of functionality to the mission editor and make creating loadouts for your aircraft even more fun than it already is. I find this to be a very fun exercise in terms of actually putting the weapons on the jets for the missions that I create. I don't know about you guys, but maybe I'm weird. But so again, Eagle Dynamics, I think this could be a fantastic way to do it. And I think just a really simple building block could be right here where it says mission payload. Add another little Excel box up here with just a little readout of exactly how much weight is on each station. So that would be like 2 of the GBU-12s here plus the TER rack there. How much weight does that add to this inboard station here? And thus, you know, we could kind of balance out the aircraft a little bit more. Rotational torque and weight and balance, arms and moments, all that kind of stuff is kind of superfluous if we can just get the aircraft to be more or less balanced out. I guess Eagle Dynamics could take it as deep as they wanted to go or as shallow as they wanted to go, but something additional there could be really fantastic. So please let me know what you guys think of this in the comments section down below. I think that it probably wouldn't even really be that big of a deal for Eagle Dynamics to input this into the graphical user interface of the mission editor, but you never know. I'm not a programmer. I'm not a super duper computer whiz. I'm just a guy who likes airplanes and knows about airplanes. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we will see you in the next one.